I'm going to talk about one of my favorite abilities that I now have in my life that I didn't have years ago. Actually, I had the ability. I didn't have the ability to control it, and I didn't have the ability to notice it when it was happening. It's called habits. So this is a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and it's a great book. You have to read habits. Habits create who you are, and they create who you will become, and it could certainly be a superpower to recreate yourself. So here's the power of habit, and you need to know this: 45% of everything you do is in your automatic mind, your subconscious mind that takes action without you having to think about it, or more importantly, expend energy. So your basal ganglia is the part of your brain that does that. Okay, you want to have things in there that serve you. You don't want to have things in there that do not serve you. Okay, your bad habits are the ones that will take away from your ability and your human potential. So the basal ganglia is the part of the brain that allows you to do whatever you want while you're doing something else that requires focus. So let's pretend you want to talk on the phone and you want to go up and down stairs. Very, very dangerous, right? But you do it every day, and you can do it without any problem. You can drive long distances without even thinking about it. That's the basal ganglia. Okay, that is the automatic mind. We as humans have evolved to want to spend as little energy as possible, because at one time food was scarce. Okay, when food was scarce, the brain was evolved, and the survival species, Richard Dawkins' book is behind me, that can get fast-acting energy quickly and spend as little energy as possible, out-survive those that couldn't. Okay, so the smarter, intelligent beings created habits that resided in their basal ganglia that helped them survive. Okay, now survival is a whole different thing. In our habits, okay, one habit in general, obviously food is available. It's very easy to get a bad food habit, and now I just saw statistics that 60% of Americans are either obese or overweight. I think 30% are morbidly obese. Okay, very, 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 very disturbing. So these habits are what's called automaticity. They create an environment, and they create what's called a status quo. That is who you are today. You're a collection of your routines and your habits. So in this book, there's a few experiments, one in general, and I'll show it to you real quick, just to prove a point that once you train the brain, and they did this with rats, with a very simple brain, even the rat, as it went through a maze, was looking for was learning the maze. It was creating habit to find the reward in the maze. So there's something called a habit loop. There's a cue, there's a routine, and then there's a reward. So in this case, the cue was the door to the maze open. It was a noise. The rat knew the door opened. The rat would enter the maze and would create a routine to search for the reward. And the first time that the rat did it, it took 13 minutes, and it spent a lot of energy, as you'll see here, looking around and learning the maze. After it learned it, it actually spent very little energy and went directly down the maze and went right and found the chocolate immediately. And during the journey to the reward, okay, you'll see the brain was highly active at the cue and the reward, and that has to do with the craving for the reward and the actual reward. In the middle was the brain was almost in an identical state, believe it or not, was when the rat was sleeping. It did it so well, it did it without any energy. Okay, that's where we want to get with our habits, and it's trainable and learnable. All right, and you got to be very conscious of cravings, and you got to be very conscious of willpower. He talks about the marshmallow experiment, which I hear a lot, and I've seen it in, I think, at least 5 books. This is one of the longest, oldest experiments. It's over 50 years old, I believe, where kids were offered marshmallow, okay, and they were told if they could wait 10 more minutes, they'd have a second marshmallow if they didn't eat the one they had in front of them. Very few kids didn't eat it. Almost all of them ate it. The ones that didn't and waited, they tracked them years later, 20 plus years later. They had better jobs, they had higher IQs, they had better results, lower incidence of addiction, they went to better colleges. It was willpower, and there is a strategy. Willpower is not on will call, okay, as Brendan Burchard talks about in his book a lot. It's a muscle. It could be flexed and stretched. So And the last story in here that I love is the story of Starbucks, where they were getting some complaints, and the complaints were usually later in the day when some of these kids that were well trained on how to handle clients that were upset, when they were tired, they didn't do it as well. They got more complaints later in the day. And even though they trained on a process called the latte, L was listen, A was acknowledge their problem, T was thank them for it, the other T was take action, and E was explain why it happened. But they had problems later in the day. All their complaints were coming later, so they put into their training that each candidate would be able to write a written plan for how they're going to resolve their problems. So that was a big part of their transformation to serve as these kids had a plan. Say, when I have a client that's upset, Q, my routine is I'm going to do the following, and the reward is they would tell their boss and they would get get it recognized. Okay, that's called the habit loop. The best thing I can tell you about this is you can use this technique to create new habits, and you can use this technique to identify and change bad habits. So if you did that, you got to understand that a habit, and I always say, like, let's say you wanted to go for a walk every day with your spouse, okay, every day, okay, and you wanted to do that. And so your cue would be, maybe you put out your shoes or your sneakers in the morning, so it cues you to go for a walk when you get home from work. And you go on the walk and you talk and you put the time in. You don't go get on a computer. You don't go deal with problems. You just do that to be together. And the reward is at the end of your walk, maybe there's a cafe where you can have some refreshments. So you would think that would be let's say it's 1 unit of energy. Okay, and it doesn't take any more or less energy to do what it is what it is, okay, but it feels more like this, right? So you think it would be a flat level energy, but it feels bigger at the beginning because you're going to install the habit. But what's good about habit is when you create momentum, okay, this is the domino, almost backwards, you get a benefit, because as you do it longer, it feels like less effort, okay, until ultimately it feels like it feels. The beautiful thing is about a habit, once it gets stored close to the basal ganglia, that actually goes away, and it doesn't take any energy. So you can install something that's very, very good for you, into your basal ganglia, like going for a walk with your spouse. What could be better than that? Instead of contributing to a bad habit. To change a bad habit, you need to go through a process. You need to identify what it is. Okay, and most people know we have severe addiction in our country. We have alcohol, we have drugs, we have social media, we have Netflix now. We got all kinds of crap that wastes time. The video games are all programmed to have triggers to your dopamine, to the reward syndrome, just like the rat. Okay, it's installed in video and installed in a lot of things, but to change a habit or to install a habit, there's a basic framework. The first step is, number one, you want to identify the routine. Number two, the routine you want to change, you want to install. Number two is you want to look for the cue. You want to identify the cue and something you want to change, or you want to create a cue and something you want to add. And then you want to see what reward is making you do this. Okay, so if you're trying to change a habit, what reward are you getting out of it? And there's a lot actually about addiction in here. Why do a lot of people start drinking, which is a big problem in the world? And it's usually not the connection to the alcohol itself. It's usually a departure from a feeling of loneliness or anxiety or depression or sadness. It's very rarely that they wanted to feel out of control. That the effect that alcohol does. The routine is alcohol. The reward is escape, typically. Okay. So are there other things you can do when you're feeling this way? Can you write a plan to do something in the middle to get that same escape? The answer is absolutely yes. And you need to look at that, and you need to figure out the components of your loops, and you need to identify them. So the first step is isolating the cue. Okay. So in a bad habit, you want to say, what is the cue that's making me do the habit? So there's 5 things in cue. There's a location. Are you someplace when the habit starts that cues you? Is it the time of day? Do you get cued at the time of day, the beginning of the day, the end of the day, whenever the habit is? If it's a snack, is it Is it something during the day that you have a time that you want to get up and accuse your routine? Is it an emotional state? Do you feel like doing it when you're upset or sad or lonely? Is it people? Are the people that trigger that? A lot of times that happens with a lot of addiction. People, you get around people and they make you feel like you want to do something that ends up being a routine, a bad routine. Or is it something that happened immediately preceding the action? Okay, a lot of times something happens and then because of that cues a routine that's not good. All right, to do that, you need to figure out the cue. Ask yourself these questions after you have observed your bad habit. Where are you? What time is it? Okay, what time is it when it happened? What's your emotional state? Who was with you? Who was around? And what action preceded the routine? And that is all a way to create an awareness that will allow you to change. And how do you change it? The bad routine, you can change out the routine in the middle. You can experiment with the cues and you can experiment with the rewards. Okay, so there's hidden cravings that are in almost everything, and I always say this: you're your own experiment. Okay, you should try everything. When you're aware of something, you can do something about it. You can't improve on anything that doesn't exist. All right, so when you're into a routine and you want to test out the rewards and the cues to change the pattern inside. All right, and that's the way you do it. So when you have a bad habit, okay, and you've identified the cue, I'll give you a quick example. You want to have a plan to insert an alternate reward. So the plan might say, when I see this, okay, and at Starbucks it was, when I see an angry client, I will do this. And they inserted the routine of the latte, and I will get a reward, which is, in their case, was recognition. Okay, it's a formula, and it is a way to implement a better plan. Psychologists call it implementation intentions. Okay, I use these beads. I'll leave with this. Like, these are my beads. This is my cue to count my calories. Okay, I see it every time I reach for something, especially if I reach for food. Okay, these beads are just simple calorie counting because I don't want to grab my phone every 10 seconds and be pecking away at an app. I use my phone too much as it is. But in the morning, I slide these beads over throughout the day, and at the end of the day, I have these 3 white beads at the end. Okay, that is 300 calories I save for Halo Top. Okay, because I've lost over 140 pounds using this system. Okay, very simple system. This is my cue and the reward I have in my brain. And it's 8 o'clock right now. I'm on target. I can have enough for a small dinner and a Halo Top. So that's how you install a new habit, or that's how you purge an old habit. But we are a product of our habits. We're a collection of our habits, our automaticity. Okay, that's the basal ganglia. That's the goal. The end play is to put great stuff in that part of your brain that works so well while you're even sleeping. Good luck creating new habits and purging old bad ones.